Hey everyone, welcome to the latest Mouth Off Hey You Guys podcast, vidcast, whatever you want to call it. Today it is May the 4th, International Star Wars Day. And now there's a lot of content that just dropped on Disney Plus, and today we're going to be looking at the implications for the last few years of Star Wars, what the successes were, what the failures were, and what the future holds. So I know that many of you out there are Star Wars fans. We want to know your opinions. You can like this video, subscribe to us for more of these chats and reviews and junket interviews, all that kind of stuff. There's a lot going on, but today we're going to focus on Star Wars. I'm joined by my co-editor, David Sztyupljak, and the lovely Scott Davis. And we're going to be looking at what Star Wars means to them and what the future holds for the series and the franchise in particular. So, first of all, Dave, now obviously you agree with me that Star Wars is much better than Star Trek, but how much better is Star Wars than Star Trek?
My favourite character in Star Wars is definitely Jean-Luc Picard, and I'll tell you why.
Please.
No. Yeah, I'm a Trekkie, really. I like Star Wars, but I've definitely just because I grew up more with Star Trek, so that's always been my go-to. But Star Wars does hold a special place in my heart. I still remember watching the movies when I was probably. Well, I reckon the first one I probably ever saw was either Return of the Jedi or The Empire Strikes Back at my friend Steven's house of a morning. And I've mentioned him before because we used to watch like 10 minutes of a no, a bit more than that, 20 minutes of a film every day for however many days it took to watch that film, because we had to, we were only at his house for a certain amount of time before we then had to leave for school. And I still remember the action figures and things like that. So Star Wars to me has always been, just that nostalgic and probably takes me back to watching films at his house, I think. Yeah.
What about you, Scott?
So I was never a huge Star Wars fan as a kid. My brother was absolutely obsessed with it. He's younger than me, but he was obsessed with Star Wars. He had all the toys, and he had loads of posters and books, and it was just an absolute Star Wars nut. But I did enjoy the movies. I remember seeing, I think my first film was Empire Strikes Back, but I think I remember vividly seeing it on the telly over Christmas. Because I vividly remember, do you remember in the old days on ITV when they used to go to the adverts, there was always like a picture of the poster or something that would
Yes, I know exactly what you mean. Yeah.
So I remember that vividly, and it was the amazing drawn Empire Strikes Back poster. So I remember that vividly. So I remember them, and then obviously I think my brother was keen to see them on the big screens when they were re-released in '97, I believe, the special editions. That kind of got me more and more interested, and then obviously since then it's been not wall to wall, but there's been a lot of Star Wars movies since then. But I think I'm a big fan of the newer, the first two of the new three. So I think my interest has peaked much more in the last few years since I've been seeing a lot more movies than they were before. But I do enjoy Star Wars. A very, very big fan. But yeah, it's my brother is obsessed and still obsessed to this day. But yeah, I don't mind a bit of Star Warsing.
Star Wars fans are well served now with Disney Plus showing the very first Star Wars TV series with the Mandalorian, which is, I don't know. There's when I saw the Mandalorian episodes, I was kind of amazed at how small they seemed and how distant and kind of remote they were. But actually, it works so much better. And I think that the Mandalorian has been probably the biggest success of Disney Plus and maybe Star Wars since
possibly.
Disney took over, because it actually harkens back to the nostalgic, not only the iconography but the stories as well. It seems quite simple. I don't know, but I'm interested because the Star Wars films, as they've been coming out, have started off really big. Force Awakens, it was a really fantastic big nostalgic shot in the arm for the series. It was the long-awaited episode 7. You know what I mean? I remember being a kid and thinking that we're never going to get to see episode 7. It was like a myth. Do you know what I mean? And then it came out and it was good, and it had Harrison Ford, and it was fine. And then after that, it started to go down in terms of coherence and kind of in terms of the way it all held together. And the last one, the Rise of Skywalker, which is hitting Disney Plus today, I think that it's a real shame because it comes across as being a very badly disjointed trilogy with this last film. I'm sure you guys agree, because it's almost as if they didn't know what they were doing and they had to kind of make it up, and you can't really do that when you've got a trilogy. So I think there's a lot of problems with trying to build a trilogy bit by bit when the first films seem to fit so seamlessly together. But guys, would you be interested in seeing another film, like a series of films. Like they're always talking about Ryan Johnson doing another load, and they keep saying, "Oh yeah, in a few years' time, we're going to have another director do this trilogy." They were signing them up like crazy. Would you be interested to see more films, or would you be interested to see more series on Disney Plus?
I think if you'd asked me that before I'd seen The Mandalorian, I'd have said, yeah, more films. And as much as people say they aren't going to watch them for whatever reasons, just because they've had enough of Star Wars, people do watch them because people love them. And you can't, I don't know, it's a bit like a drug. Once you've had it, you can't stop. There's this weird addiction to it. And it's the same with any franchise that people love, especially Star Wars, which is arguably one of the biggest franchise of them all. But after seeing Mandalorian and what they did with it, the art, the character arcs, the fact they can tell these stories over longer periods of time, the budget that they had, the genius of Jon Favreau, of the writing and the directors that they had come in to make it, was just excellent. So I think actually now maybe Disney and Lucasfilm will start looking at different ways to do this, and or maybe not different ways, maybe they'll just carry on with Mandalorian and think, do you know what, we'll spend more money on our TV shows than and invest in those than we will in the movies.
Scott, what do you think?
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think the franchise there's a couple of reasons why I think it's failed. I think one, strangely, I think the fact that George Lucas hasn't been involved from a sheer point of there was always a plan with George Lucas. He always knew what episode 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 would look like. Obviously, I know he didn't direct the original sequels, but I think he had that continuity through the 3 films, especially with the prequels, even though they weren't particularly good. I don't think there was a plot line for all of them, and I think with The Force Awakens and then with Last Jedi, and as you say with Rise of Skywalker, it felt very, very disjointed all the way through. I think they seemed to there was always this perception, I guess, with fans and everything, where they always wanted what they wanted. They let Ryan Johnson kind of make the film he wanted to make, and all the fans seemed to be really, really, there's a lot of vitriol thrown at Ryan Johnson because he was trying to do something different. And I think the Rise of Skywalker obviously suffered from that. But I think if you look at the success of The Mandalorian, it's proved that if you get, like Dave said, you get a bit more time with the characters, a bit more time to build up a mythology, I think that's kind of what people are hungry for. And if you look at the state of TV as it is now, I think it's kind of slowly audiences are enjoying TV a lot more than perhaps they used to, because the writing and the people behind the cameras, the talent is so rich and the stories are so compelling that, there's nothing to say that if they had X amount of pounds or dollars to spend on it, that they couldn't make a Star Wars TV show. They've always talked about doing the Clone Wars as a live action, but I think the animated show has proven that they don't necessarily need to do that. The Mandalorian's been a huge success, and obviously there's the Obi-Wan Kenobi show that's was obviously delayed before the coronavirus. Now it's been delayed again because of the production and stuff. But that to me is more interesting than having an episode 10.
Yeah,
in episode 10. I think that's that. And if they were to say they're going to do something about, I don't know, Boba Fett, they'd say they've always talked about doing a Boba Fett film. They've always talked about maybe doing a Jabba the Hutt film, whether they're the actual ideas that they're going to go with or not. But I think there's much more room, and I think there'd be a bigger hunger now after the success of The Mandalorian to see a lot more of the TV shows. And I think even Disney themselves might look at that with their streaming platform now, that's the place where they're gonna do all this stuff. So I'd be more interested to see some TV series than I would any more films. I think the films have they need to, at least if they come back, they need to stop for a while, kind of regroup, and then come up with something a little bit more original than just more sequels.
The guys at Disney aren't stupid either. These guys are some of the cleverest, biggest people in the business, and now that they've got Disney Plus as a platform, they don't have to be pushing things onto Netflix or onto Sky or on different platforms. They've now got their home, so they need the content for their home. And as we discussed in a previous mouth off, streaming is where we're going. We were discussing yesterday, with Odeon and Universal having this big hoo-ha about where their films are going to live, but actually online is the future, and these big companies know that, and Disney are probably ahead of the curve, trying to keep up with the likes of Netflix to make sure they've got content to put in it. So I don't know if this stat's still correct, but 2 years ago Netflix spent $8 billion on original content, and which is just obscene. And Disney needs to, with this Disney Plus arguably has taken too long to come out. Think the power of Disney is fine. That they're going to be they can weather any storm. They just keep buying everybody up with, I think it was 80 billion they spent on Fox last year. It's just, the numbers are mind blowing. But yeah, content is what it's all about, and we're not going to have a shortage of Star Wars. I'm sure of that fact.
That makes
John, what do you think?
Well, I was going to say that makes the $4 billion that Disney bought Lucasfilm for, it seem like small change, doesn't it? Do you know what I mean? And yet they already made like a billion on each film, I'm sure.
Yeah.
And they've recently completed Star Wars World, the big theme park in America, which is going to do huge business for them. They've got many animated, series out there, loads of spin-off books and everything. They're keeping a very tight hold on it. I think it's a shame that the films didn't do so well, and we're also talking about Solo, which was kind of pointless but a good fun film, and Rogue One, which I think is probably the best of the new Star Wars films to come out.
I liked it.
But it's great that you have these new directors and new people running around in the same sandbox, if you like, but it's a very small sandbox because it's always within the same few characters. However, I do think Star Wars is an inherently cinematic thing, not just, completely colored by the fact that it was my first ever cinema experience. It was like a double bill, Star Wars and Empire Strikes Back, and when I was like 5 or 6, got to see Return of the Jedi, really early, and it was just amazing. I think that the smaller screen Star Wars will come out. I think, as you said, it's just the way it's going to be because it makes more sense to bring it onto Disney Plus, and there's perhaps a bit less risk. You can tell longer stories. It's the way that storytelling is going in some ways. And also, one thing you can't hide from is the fact that the fan base turned so toxic when The Last Jedi came out, partly because it wasn't what they wanted, and partly because I think they weren't happy with the way that certain older characters were treated and all that kind of nonsense. Do you know what I mean? It's all completely pointless, and the internet becomes a sewer even more than it normally is when anything Star Wars happens. So maybe what happens now is we get something a bit more low key. The Kenobi series is
that's Marvel, mate.
Low-key, very good. I think that they'll step back a little bit rather than say, coming in 14 years we're going to have another 3 films from this great filmmaker, because I think that fans are kind of far too wary about it, and I think they'll basically just put the Kenobi series out. I think they'll start to branch out a little bit. They've got another one, High Republic, I think, which is going to be honest, I don't really know much about it, but they're clearly planning for the future of it in all kinds of media. So I think that I think Scott's right. I think they're going to take a break from the cinema, which I think is probably a healthy thing. And I do think that we're going to start to see a slow pushing out of the boundaries. Hopefully they're going to find new stories to tell, and it's going to bring a little more of the joy that we had when we were young into it. But I don't know. It'll be interesting to see. I've got this image of Jabba the Hutt now as like the Godfather in my head, as kind of like this kind of gangster mafia.
What will he find in his bed? Will he find a horse head
or
or some sort of?
I don't know. A lot of people were saying that Star Wars was dead, that the ideas were dead, that there's not an awful lot to do with it. I think that they've proved that that's not the case, but I think fans are going to have to relinquish their hold a little bit, because I think it needs to have a little more space, a little more space, a little more air to breathe.
Space, the final frontier. These are the voyages of the Starship
That's
Enterprise.
way too Star Trek. I would be interested in a Star Wars versus Star Trek. Then I'd be happy. But yeah, it's interesting because Star Trek have kind of come back with so many series. Do you know what I mean? And Picard was on recent Discovery.
Well, but that's over a long time. So actually, that's true. Discovery and Picard has been relatively close together, hasn't it? But there does seem to be Star Trek is suffering the same thing, where I think it's struggling to find its audience, and maybe I think Picard did a good job. It's interesting, but I'm sure Paramount are having exactly the same issues as Star Wars, Lucasfilm are trying to figure out where to take these shows.
Of course, but then it's really difficult, and that is a problem with how do you move forward, because people want the old stuff, they want the stuff that they know,
the nostalgic.
Exactly, and that's fine for maybe a poster, you know what I mean, or maybe like a little Easter egg hunt here.
Well, we said, do you remember when Picard trailer came out and we watched it? Me and John watched it together, and we were like, it had Data, it had him saying "make it so," engage even, and him saying "make it so," and we were like, yep, and we loved it,
it was
because because it it's that nostalgic feeling.
I think it's just such a shame that the films have kind of ended up the way that they've gone, in terms of, like you touched on there, John, about the kind of the fan base and how it was on Twitter and stuff like that. I mean, it kind of ruined it in many ways. You know, the fans obviously, in a sense, that the fans after Last Jedi were like, we don't want this. This is not a Star Wars film. This is how can you do this? All this kind of stuff. And then they tried to kind of correct the course with the Rise of Skywalker, but it was almost too late, because they didn't really have that plan, and because they were doing it every 2 years, it almost felt like, it feels like a rush job. It's not a bad film, Rise of Skywalker. It's enjoyable, and there's a lot of good stuff in it, but you can just see that it's very, very, as you said, very, very disjointed. And I think that's a shame, that if that is to be the last one, that not that it's a bad film, but it's still kind of slightly sour, I guess, you know, because it doesn't feel finished.
It won't be the last one.
It won't be, do you know what I mean? But if it for now anyway, you know, is that the last movie? It's and the Rise of the Last Jedi as well. Which
don't forget, movie making's a business. Let's have a look and see what.
Of course, someone will come along with an idea. It's the same with a lot of stuff, isn't it? Like with Nolan, with Batman, with all these other franchises. Someone out there will come along and say, "I've got an idea for a Star Wars movie. If you let me make it the way I want to make it, I think it could be really good within the confines of a."
It made over $1 billion, but it was only just over $1 billion. So that's in today's world, that's not.
It's a huge amount of money. I think that, again, it's
it's obscene.
As with most franchises, you have the success thing. It's the same with Bond. You know, when Skyfall made over $1 billion for the first time, straight away there's even more pressure on you to deliver that amount of money. The Rise of Skywalker, The Force Awakens is the biggest movie in America of all time, and I think the second highest grossing film of all time worldwide. I think only after Endgame. So with that came a lot of pressure of what do we do, where do we go, and
which film? Sorry, are you saying?
The Force Awakens was obviously
that's fourth.
Oh, it's fourth now.
Yeah,
I think in America it's still the number one.
Oh, okay, could be. Yeah,
this is hilarious. Do you know why I'm talking about this? Didn't I ask this question on the quiz the other day, and I knew the answers, and I'm just talking about it wrong.
Okay, so Avatar second, Titanic third, I think. So last year, Rise of Skywalker was the 7th highest grossing film. First was Endgame, then Lion King, Frozen 2, Captain Marvel, Spider-Man Far From Home, then Joker, then Disney. So Disney, Warner. Actually, Spider-Man Far From Home was Sony, right?
Yeah, Sony get
Sony. So then Warner for Joker, and then Disney again, and then Disney, Sony, Universal. Yeah.
It is a bit, it's a bit shocking, really, but not that shocking. And scary.
I also need to correct my stat earlier where I said that Disney bought Fox for $80 billion. It was only $52.4 billion, so I was wrong.
Oh man, that is loose change.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, let's go on top.
Yeah, no. So I was just going to say, $1 billion. We're talking about like it's a failure. $1 billion is a nice little chunk. If anyone wants to give me $1 billion, or us $1 billion, fine, we don't mind. But it seemed to make the franchise, the series of movies anyway, end on a bit of a dampener. But I don't think it should be considered that, because I think it's it's still a good film. But I think it's the state of it. But then the Mandalorian's kind of come at just the right time for fans to go, oh, that was rubbish. And then go, oh, hang on a minute, this is great. This is maybe what we want more of. So it's
But they're going to struggle. It's tricky to even maintain something like Mandalorian's done very well season 1, as many films do. The original comes along, and then it's a tough thing to keep at the same level. But though I did read somewhere that Mandalorian season 3 has already been greenlit. Is that correct?
I think season 2's been filmed, and I think that's still going to come out in October time.
Yeah,
I think so. They'll just keep on churning them out and seeing what happens. But I'm more interested in things that if Star Wars is going to continue, I want it to continue in kind of a different direction. I think that's what I liked most about The Last Jedi, is that Rian Johnson gave us a little look at a bit of a wider world, and that's kind of where you wanted it to go from there, and it didn't, because fans couldn't take it or whatever. I don't know. It seems like a real shame. Basically, I think what we're going to see is we're going to see a few more tentative steps towards different things, and I think nothing will ever be able to sort of regain that feeling of surprise that we had when we were kids. But that's not the point of Star Wars, as Dave is very fond of saying. It's a business, so that's what we're going to see. So.
I'm not fond of saying that. It's just worth remembering, because as much as it's about the movie fans, but right, yeah, it's the bottom line for the studios.
Yeah. So,
if something doesn't make money, gone
in the can. So guys, let's draw this to a close. Any final thoughts on things you've enjoyed since Disney brought up Lucasfilm? Things that you've maybe missed from the earlier Star Wars things, or are you excited to see more Star Wars in the future?
Scott.
Okay, I'm that person. I loved The Last Jedi, so if you want to send some hate my way, feel free. I don't care. I thought Last Jedi was brilliant. I think that I really enjoyed The Last Jedi. I did enjoy The Force Awakens, but it's those three middle films that will always be the three for me. Do you know what I mean? Like, they are the pinnacle of Star Wars in my brain. So yeah, I will always have fond memories of Star Wars, and I will always enjoy watching Star Wars, whether good or bad. But I will say that Last Jedi, out of the three most recent films, I think that was fantastic. Also, I have a wish, which is at the start of the Obi-Wan Kenobi show, the first two words out of his mouth surely have to be "Hello there."
Hello there.
Surely. But I'm excited for the Obi-Wan show, because I can't wait to see Ewan McGregor back as Obi-Wan Kenobi. I'm interested to see how they navigate that portion of time and what they kind of do with it, because I think the Mandalorian has set a nice kind of framework of what you can achieve on the Disney Plus, and if you let someone kind of tell a story they want.
Is that like being on the Twitter?
Like being on the Twitter
when you're on the Disney Plus.
Yeah, on the Disney Plus.
I'm just going on the Twitter.
But I'm excited to see Obi-Wan. When they said he was, because I've interviewed him just going off on a tangent. I interviewed him a couple of times, and he always said, "No, never gonna happen." And then it came out that he was lying like 5 years or something, which is just so great.
The best one was like 2 weeks before they announced the Friends reunion. You asked David Schwimmer whether or not it might happen. No, never happened.
That was literally the night before, wasn't it, or something? I'm sure it was like
it was a couple of nights before. But I think in hindsight, I think he was more, because the reunion is not what people think it is. It's like they're getting together for interviews and stuff. But I think he meant in terms of an actual reunion. Yeah. But I'm very excited to see, going back to Star Wars, Ewan McGregor back as Obi-Wan. I think that would be pretty exciting.
Dave, what about you?
Well, I'll always watch a Star Wars film. I don't feel like I can contribute, because I don't know enough about it. I just enjoy the films. I have no preconceptions about what I do or don't want. I'll happily go and watch a Star Wars film and enjoy it just because it's a Star Wars film and I like the universe. That said, Lucasfilm also own Indiana Jones, and after the diabolical fourth film and Disney's heritage on making things decent, I'm keen for that.
Interesting.
Let us know in the comments if you are or not. But yeah, because that's something that people don't really talk about very much. And I know indies come up recently in the news. Yeah, but it's that. Did I mention that movie making's a business? So
yes,
let's see.
Okay. Well, listen. Thank you very much for your thoughts on that. You've soured the conversation with the talk of the fifth Indiana Jones film. That's fine. If you guys out there have any comments, please leave them down below on the YouTube, and it'd be interesting to see what you think, because Star Wars is not going to go away, and we're interested just as much as you are to see where it goes. So thank you for watching. Do keep
May the 4th be with you.
I was leading up to that, man.
I'm sorry, John. Ruined it.
It's gone now. But have a lovely Star Wars day. Keep safe, and we'll see you soon.
May the 4th be with you. Well. I can't do it, Scott.
Don't do that. How can you not do it and I can do it? How is that possible? Come on, Dave. This is like playground stuff.
I'm broken.
Dave, you look more like Danny DeVito as the Penguin in Batman Returns than doing Spock.
Oh,
bye, guys.
Ladies and gentlemen, you're watching Hey You Guys!
Hey You Guys, huh?
Hey, you guys.
Is that from the Goonies?
It is indeed, yeah.
Nice.